When you and a special young man desire a relationship, but you don't have his parents' blessing, how do you proceed joyfully, or should you?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
So I can't believe it's been over a year since we did the last interview, and so much of your life has changed. I was briefly watching that older one, and I just thought, my goodness, your career has changed. You've moved, so many things. So I thought, what a great time to figure out all of the new things.
Yes. I'm still figuring out a lot of new things, but yes.
And so let me grab my paper.
Yes.
So how long have you been married now?
We just celebrated 1 year, April 12th. So I guess here at June, it's like almost 14 months. So,
and was there anything that you were surprised about?
I had already started cooking. It comes to the top of the list because like I had already started cooking like once a week the last like 6 months we were engaged and dating, because Josh had kind of jokingly, sort of serious, said, I think that may be a big adjustment for you because I did not cook. I did not like to cook. I thought it was just kind of like, it was not something I enjoyed, mainly because I was scared of it because I knew so little about it. That was the reason. And my mom always cooked for us growing up like that. I was used to home cooked meals. It wasn't that. I don't know what, there was this like mental shift, probably because I worked a lot. So coming home, the last thing on my mind was like preparing something. It was just kind of like keep something convenient around. So that's what I did. So learning to do that like several nights a week was a big adjustment. And I fell in love with it. Like absolutely love it. I don't think I'm a great chef or anything yet, but I absolutely love like meal planning and grocery shopping and working on all that stuff. So that has surprised my family too. They're all kind of like, what? Like you bring real food to family get-togethers now? And like I felt really accomplished Sunday. My grandma asked me to bring the cornbread to dinner, and I was like, that is the feeling of you have arrived when Grandma says. So Josh was like, she must really trust you a lot. I said, I think she does. I don't know why.
So that's really cute. And now you're gardening, and none of that has made its way to your table yet. It's still in the process.
No, it's there. We have a few little green tomatoes, a few little tiny squash. They're like 2 inches tall, and that's totally new for me. Like I don't have a green thumb. I've kept my hanging baskets alive now going on 9 weeks, and that is a total miracle. Like my dad has a real green thumb, and he was over a few days ago, and he said, Natalie, your plants are doing good. Like he was so shocked. I said, yeah, I'm shocked too. Don't worry. So
transitioning from, you said that you got married right after you turned 30. And so transitioning from a single person's finances to dual finances, was that tricky?
I think it still is. And I've asked a couple other older married couples, like, how do they do that? Like, what do you do? Because I know some couples that they always kept it separate and decided on each thing that they would pay for and things like that. And we don't want to do that. But the process of like changing my name and my passport and my driver's license, there were so many things that had to be changed. So on paper, we do a budget together every month, and we sit down every month and go over it. And that's been very, very helpful. But so on paper, it's all together, but we actually still currently have 2 different banks, because a lot of the things like the water bill or whatever, this is the most mundane stuff, but it's just part of it that I was surprised by. Like that already is like automatically drafted and has been for years out of my account. So it was like, well, let's just leave that there. And then like the power bill. So there's just stuff like that I didn't expect. And it was just like, oh, well, then it makes kind of sense to just keep it instead of having to change it. So we've talked about, because both of our businesses have changed over the past year as well, like dramatically. So it's kind of like, okay, what do we do? And I think some of those waters we've not fully navigated through, just because you're learning as you go, and there's not like a clear cut, this is what you have to do, you know, within the couple weeks after you got married. A good friend of ours, they got married just a little over a month after us. And like, she had her name changed with like the week after their honeymoon. And I think I changed my name officially in like August or something. Like it was so funny. Like our marriage license, this is funny. We actually forgot to have the pastor sign it at our wedding. So I signed it, Josh signed it, my sister, who's my maid of honor, signed it, and Josh's best man signed it.
It was like during the beautiful part of the ceremony.
Yes, and no pastor signed it. So my mom took it to the courthouse. Like, they found it like 2 months later in a bunch of wedding decorations. And it was like, this is their marriage license. Like, where has this been? So my mom took it to the courthouse for us in Hendersonville, and she said, how do we actually need to go about getting their license to them? This is just a certificate. And they were like, well, you can submit it. It was way late. Like, they shouldn't have let us. And they're like, but no pastor has signed it. So, like, so
you got married like 3 months after you were
married? Yeah, it was like June. So we took it. My mom sent it to us. She's like, you have to get a pastor to sign this. So we took it to my granddad. He lives next door. And we were like, at the kitchen table, we said, Papa, can you sign our marriage license? Even though we've been married for 2 months. So I'm not really sure when our anniversary is, April or June. But yeah, I think some of those finances things, like, you're figuring it out, and every month is different when you own your own business. So it's kind of like, what do we do here? So I don't know. I don't have a great answer for that.
And so owning your own businesses, you went from teaching at a school to full-time online teaching, and your husband does what?
He helps a lot with my business too. It's grown to the point where I can't do it all, especially like the video editing and just managing some of that social media side. It's too much for one person, which is a blessing. But so he kind of, when we realized that was happening, he made the decision to step away from his full-time job, and kind of like we work together. And then he also runs a side business of like some construction related things and stump grinding. And he's a great business mind in general. So that's been a wonderful blessing to me. But that's kind of that, all of that's just been new to navigate for both of us, because our goal, I don't know, a few months after we got married, we realized that we needed to make our schedules more flexible to not be closed off to ministry doors that the Lord would open, because it's like, oh, we can't go do that because we have to be here. And he said, I feel like whatever God has for our future, we need to be in a position where our jobs are more mobile and we can kind of do them anywhere. So that's been a really, really great blessing to both of us. But I have greatly appreciated his involvement in what I'm doing, because like, if you see a great idea on anything related to my business, it was probably his. So I can carry it out, but the ideas don't always come to me. They come to him. So
you do have a great team there between your sister and your husband and yourself. It works.
Thankful. Yeah, and that's allowed Emily to kind of step aside and focus on some other things that she wanted to, which is wonderful. And the Lord's just like, I have some great people surrounding me, that's for sure.
Is that the ding from your screen or my screen?
That is from mine, I think.
Okay.
Sometimes I get an email come through or something and it'll beep right here. And I thought I had that muted, but I didn't.
Wow. So you have recently recorded a new CD. I just finished recording my 4th album last night, and I thought it would get easier as time progressed, but I think that it got more challenging because you learn more. So then you think, oh, I can do more and I can do better. And then you grow as a person, and then your writing kind of grows and evolves with you. And the last time we talked, you had written a song, and the Bible Truth Music Quartet bought those rights from you. But on this one, you have a whole bunch of new songs that you've written. How many songs did you write on this album?
All 10 of them. So Bible Truth Music actually is like producing the album. We're kind of, I guess we're under their label for this album. And Brother Fox wanted to do original songs, just, I guess, because it's fresh, it's different. Our family's never made a vocal album. So there were a lot of reasons behind it. And I had written them and really had not done much with them. Our family sings a few of them, things like that, but I hadn't really done much with them. And I don't consider myself a songwriter. I just have written a few songs. So it's kind of like that.
So what's the difference between a songwriter and somebody who's written songs? And how long has it taken you to write all of these songs?
So a couple of them, there's the very first one I wrote is on the album, He Made a Way in a Manger. My mom sings it and I just love it. And I wrote that when I was 18. And then one of the songs on there I wrote about a year ago. So that would be the most recent. So I guess it spans about 12 years.
15 years. So I wrote 9 of the 11 on my CD, and took about 6 years, and it does take time. And I feel like as a Christian songwriter, you go through things that inspire songs, and if all of those things happened all in one year, we'd all be in shock,
Yeah. It would be a very emotional album if I wrote it in 1 year. No, they're all different. And I felt like none of them talk about trials. And I feel like a lot of Christian songwriters right now, like trials is kind of a theme for many songs that are being written. And at first I looked at the song list and I said, we don't have one song that deals with like the dark times necessarily. There's one line in one song it's called I Have a Bible, and it talks about God's word being a strength during those times. But other than that, I realized like the album is more like blessings we receive because of knowing Christ and the benefits of being a believer. And the album is called We Need the Church, after one of the songs. And we had really prayed about looking through the song list, like which one of these is a title song? And just in light of everything that's been going on in our country the last few months, when we were practicing We Need the Church, my dad, and he said it, and then we were all like, yeah, that's it. Dad said, I really feel like that might ought to be the title track, just that theme of the body of Christ uniting together and like standing firm during this. Look at what the church has been to all of us for so many years. So that's what we kind of ended up going with. And I think that's the newest song that I had written. I feel like it is. I wrote it from a sermon series my dad did the year we got married. So it would have been I think it would have been early that year. We got married in April, but I think it was just a few months before that. And one of the lines that he said was, the tabernacle that the children of Israel, carried with them through the wilderness all those years, the tabernacle stayed the same, even though their location changed.
Right.
And they could set that tabernacle up, and it was just this foundational part of their lives that did not change. And he just talked about that's what the church represents to the believer. It's like something that's steady and just consistent, and you can rely on that. Like God designed it to be that way. And so I thought, that's a really great line, something that stays the same even when life changes. So I wrote it during his sermons. There's 3 or 4 on there that I've written during Dad's sermons.
My husband makes fun of me because during sermons, one of the songs on my album is called But God, and the preacher was talking, and he just went to a passage of scripture, and it said the rough thing that was happening, and it said, but God. And I thought, I wonder how many of those are in scripture. And so I just went through, and it's amazing, how powerful God is, that we would be in hell, but God, the Redeemer. And also in regards to the church, the title track of my album is Fight On. And it's that same philosophy that we as a church need to unite in doctrine, in unity and love, and really just press forward rather than being discouraged and dark.
I love it. Love it. That's a good thought.
So let me just make sure I'm on track. Yes. I had several questions that were given to me on Instagram. You are beauty in black and white, and I am amazingly deep thoughts. And we asked for questions, and a lot of them pertain to being single because that tends to be what my ministry is about. And so here are some of the questions. Transitioning from being a child in your parents' household to being an adult while still living at home. How do you honor your parents in that, but still be your own person?
I think I was very blessed that my parents recognized that I was an adult. So there was some independence there, and I worked full time. So it wasn't that I was in the home every single day. But I think one of the best ways a woman, especially in that position, and I guess a guy to the same extent really, is to include them in advice for decision making. Because they're there as protection for you. You're still in the home, and that is a powerful umbrella of protection, especially if they're believers, if they love the Lord and they are making wise decisions themselves. Then when I made decisions about buying a car, choosing to take on extra responsibilities at work or whatever, just include them, get their perspective and their advice. And I think for an adult child, I say the word child, an adult child in the home, that interacting with your parents and staying involved instead of just thinking, I'm an adult, I don't really have to include them. Even not just about advice for decisions, but just part of your day. talking to them, staying, like building almost a friendship. I think children who are small, like your relationship with your parents is more like training and they're teaching you and things like that. But as I've grown older, my relationship with my parents became more like a friendship. And I think that's how it ought to be. And like, I consider my mom and dad two of my dearest friends. Like, we still talk a lot, and like, not just getting the idea of I'm supposed to be my own person and I don't need their input. Like, their input is priceless, especially if they love Jesus. And I think like even for a child whose parents, maybe they're not on the same page spiritually, like you can still honor them by making wise decisions yourself and not giving them anything to worry about. Like, I never wanted my parents to worry about me and where I was and things like that. Like, even on nights when I chaperoned a lot of ball games for our Christian school. And so I was always on the bus trips and things like that. I would let my parents know, like, it's going to be late, it'll be super late or whatever, just so they didn't worry. And, keeping them informed instead of building a wall of, I'm independent now, I don't need your help. It's like, I actually still need my parents' help and input. Right. Even now, I call my mom, like, what do I do with this gravy? How do I make this not look clumpy? Even things like that. It's just like, get their perspective. They're wise. They're God's gift to you.
That's very good. And so you covered actually 2 questions within that, and that was excellent. Now, your parents essentially moved out and left you. And
yes.
You're like, we've had enough of this. We're going on to bigger and better things, right? So how did that impact your finances? How do you suddenly become financially independent, or was it really a gradual transition?
I would say it was somewhat gradual. They moved out and we became the empty nesters. And so Emily and I shared an apartment, which is in the lower level of our home, and we rented out the top level to my parents. Rented it out. We didn't rent it out. And so it's got separate entrances and everything. So it's like its own house. It's just 2 separate living levels. So Emily and I, what we did with those renters, they were related to us, so that worked out really well. We divided the bills I think we did it in fourths. So we each paid a fourth. So I would end up actually having it come out of my account, but then they would all pay. We just contributed separately. So it was like Emily and I shared a car insurance policy. So she would take care of that. I would take care of her portion of water, power, trash, and internet, that whatever your bills are. So I think that was kind of like the first couple months after mom and dad did move. It was like, oh, so I'll take care of that. And I learned a lot in a really short amount of time. Like, okay, all right. So who do I talk to get this changed? And there were just things like that. But that increased more the bill side of things. But I think that helped too, because it did prepare me more for what I'm doing now. Because I know.
How old were you when your parents moved out?
26. I think I was 26. I may have been 27.
And you were working full time?
Yes.
You were both working full time?
Yes. And I think that helps. Like, I'm all for a girl, like, not just thinking those single years ought to be like, well, I just have to stay at home until I get married. It's like, no, find a skill, find a gift. I think for women now in 2020, it is easier than ever for you to either get educated in a skill you want to pursue, whether it be a skill you already have the groundwork for but just want to get better at, or learn something new, like whether that be through community college or a web-based course, or there are YouTube videos for everything. And if that's not your thing, multi-level marketing business, like if you want to sell oils or you want to sell candles or jewelry, whatever it is, like develop a business skill that you can use for your own self. I think that's very important for girls. I'm not a fan of it being like, I'm just supposed to stay home. And you can learn a lot from your mom about household management. I love that. I did learn a lot. The cooking thing was still a big adjustment, I'll admit. But I'm just all about find your skill, develop something that you can use to benefit your family financially, whether that be now or in the future.
I'm actually working on a video series, probably it'll come out next year, specifically talking about that, how important it is for a woman or a female to learn skills and continually learn, because you just don't know. And you can use it if you happen to get married, you can use it within that set, of life. but my goodness, to have a skill is just extremely important. All right, next question. And I didn't get a lot of info, so this is just coming right at you. When you and a special young man desire a relationship, but you don't have his parents' blessing, how do you proceed joyfully, or should you?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I would first of all consider the spiritual state of his parents. If they're godly people who love the Lord and they have some real question marks about you and him, I would be very cautious before I proceeded into that relationship, because they're older and because they've walked with Jesus a lot longer than you, whatever your age is, if they're believers and they have been for a long time, they have more experience than you. I'd be very cautious before I moved into a relationship with someone if his parents were not in support of that. I think it is dangerous, extremely dangerous for a girl to just continue to pursue that. If he's willing to just disregard godly advice from his parents to date you, that tells you what he thinks about authority and what he thinks about respect. So that's scary. That's a red flag. So I just would be like, definitely, you should not move forward with that. If his parents have like serious spiritual issues in their own life and their reasons for not supporting you guys' relationship is because, I don't know, for whatever reason, they make fun of your standard or something about that, then I would try to include the counsel of a pastor, somebody also godly and wise that can give input to that relationship. But just to say like, oh, we just love each other, we're going to proceed anyway, like we think it'll be all right, that's really scary. I wouldn't go there.
I agree 100%. That was, yes. So another question was, how do you deal with the pain of childlessness as a mature single?
I would say fill your life with children that you can be a blessing to and serve, whether that be through your church nursery or like I was blessed because I taught. So I was around kids all the time. And like I have nieces that I just adore. So I don't feel like those years of singleness, don't let them be consumed with feeling like I'm going to be childless. That's just the worst thing that could ever happen because God made me a woman and I'm supposed to have children. It's like there are plenty of married women dealing with childlessness too. So if you let that become this, I don't know, immobilizing force in your life that just says, I just can't serve God because I just wish I had children so badly. It's like, actually, there's a lot of women in that position, both single and married. So whatever your situation, serve right where you are. So if you love babies and you don't have any, serve the babies around you. Find a mother in your community or your church that she could really use a few hours of peace and quiet and ask if you can help out with her kids. Like there are ways for you to still feel that blessing of like, oh, I just love these kiddos. And if God's not put that in your life, whether it's because you're single and you're not married or because you're married and you haven't had children yet, it's like serve those around you. And I think that can ease the pain, if you will, of that. Because when you get focused on serving other people, you stop worrying quite so much about yourself. And I'm not minimizing the fact that childlessness and singlehood and all those things don't have some sadness to them and some loneliness to them. It does. But the more you get focused on serving other people and serving Jesus, the less you think about pain and loneliness and things like that. And it becomes more like, I've been given a great opportunity to bless as many people as I possibly can. And I know that sounds like the spiritual answer, but I really tried to live that way as a single person and still as a married person, like serving my husband, serving my church family, still serving my family in a different level. And like, that's where joy is. It's not thinking about yourself. It's focusing that energy on blessing other people.
Yes, that's excellent thought. How is singleness different as you age from high school through adulthood?
I think I might have said this in the first interview, but like if you'd have told me that I was going to have that decade of singleness after high school, I probably would have been mildly terrified, mild to extremely terrified. We'll say it that way, because I had seen some girls navigate those years very successfully, and I had seen girls navigate those years not so successfully. So part of my thoughts on singleness in general was just that I wanted to do it God's way, whatever that was. And so I just got to talk to a friend of mine a couple days ago. She and I are 10 years apart. She got married at 28. We were dear friends all through those years, even though I was younger than her. And she said, can you believe we actually got married really close to the same age? Like you and I, she told me when I was a teenager, she's like, you're probably not going to get married until you're about the same age I am now that I'm getting married. And I thought, oh, who knows, whatever. But it really did end up that way. And we just laughed about that this week, thinking about all that God did in my life during those 10 years. And I think like when you're 18 and you finish high school, your first thought is like, okay, the next thing is either college or marriage. Like that's it.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily it for everybody. I did go to college and then go straight to working full time. And you're kind of like thinking for those first few years, I think you're always thinking like every guy you meet is like, oh man, do I need to date him? And then especially like I had a couple that inquired and I wasn't interested in. So then it was like, am I squandering away my last opportunity? Like, is this wise that I'm not interested? So is that a bad thing? And I would have these long heart-to-heart talk with my parents. I'd be like, is it bad? I'd cry. And Dad would be like, it's okay. It's fine. It was probably more wearisome to them how just, it was perplexing to me that like I wanted to be married, but I didn't know if it's that I wasn't ready to be married myself and I was enjoying what God had for me then, or if I was like missing the opportunity by saying no to this guy or whatever. So that kind of bothered me. But I think as you grow, number one, I learned that the Lord could be everything I needed. Like he promised in his word that he would be, but he really is. Like all those verses are true. And then the second thing, it was like, singleness is not a death sentence. Like there's a lot of joy right where I'm at. And to not look at every new thing as, what if I meet someone here? Like that's exhausting. So I kind of didn't really think that way. I tried to focus more on just like, hey, serve right where you are, whatever that means. And then you really enjoy your life more. And life becomes more about living fully instead of looking for that somebody. So
right.
Hope that helps.
It is, yep. And what are ways that you can pray and prepare for your future spouse?
I did pray for Josh before I knew who he was. That's true. Like praying for my future husband. And I think I shared the list of verses that I prayed. I believe it's in the YouTube comments on the last interview. Okay. I thought I had remembered to share that. So I prayed for things like that he would redeem the time because the days are evil, that the Lord would keep him from the snare of the strange woman, that he would honor the Lord with his substance and with the first fruits of his increase, that he would trust in the Lord with all his heart and lean not into his own understanding, that he would develop a close relationship with his godly authority, his pastor. And the Lord did fulfill those things, like for sure. But I think like thinking about asking God to help whoever your future husband is be a godly man is more important than like the lists that sometimes girls have fallen into. I feel like it's a little bit of a trap to write out a list of like, I want him to have this color hair and this. And it's like, you can be as specific as you want to be. I chose more to focus on like qualities that I wanted him to have. Yeah. If he to lead me, So I think that like searching the scriptures on what makes a godly man and then praying your husband will develop those traits.
Yes. And in our last interview, you said that you kind of felt like maybe wanting a husband that would be attractive to you, that wasn't supposed to be important, and that maybe you were going to marry somebody who wasn't, and then you were like, yes, he's hot. I love him. Maybe that's the exact words, but you know what I'm saying.
It's pretty close.
I was talking to some ladies, and they said, an independent, fundamental, Bible-believing Baptist, hymns, et cetera. They said, why is it that most of the Baptists are just kind of plain? And it's the people who have more liberal beliefs that are more handsome. And it's just that draw of, should I settle? Should I really focus on the doctrine and the beliefs and that character and settle? Or, here you are, God has really given you the desire of your heart. But then there's the issue of the lists and, what is settling and what is just, that discernment of, should I have passed that guy up? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think that ultimately, character matters more. I will say that until the day I die. That is really, really true. But it's funny because I was just having a conversation about a week ago with a friend of ours has started dating a girl. And so we all went hiking together and met her, and it was super fun. And she and I were chatting as we were walking, and she said, so what was your first like impression when you met Josh, when you met your husband? Like for real, not the years before when I kind of just barely knew who he was. And I said, without even thinking, I was like, honestly, he was really good looking. Like that was kind of, it sort of stood out, you know? And then I was like, it was funny because like in all those years of just like praying for character, and that really was my focus. Like I'm not just saying that from a spiritual side. I really did want a godly man. If the Lord would have me married, I wanted it to be somebody who led me in the word. But then for the Lord, like that kind of initial was like, oh, wow, very handsome. Okay. So like that surprised me that was one of the first things I thought. And then as I, of course, got to know him, I mean, I realized like his heart was for the Lord, like 100%. And that's been an incredible blessing to me. But yeah, and my mom used to tell me, because I'd say, I just worry I'm going to get somebody plain. And my mom, she'd say, whoever you marry, you'll think he's gorgeous. That's why you married him. And I was like, okay, well, can't be that bad. And I really do think that when the Lord leads you together, there is some of that like, oh, I did find this person attractive. And I mean, you see different couples of all different like looks and backgrounds and things like that Lord's put together, and they're deliriously happy with each other. And I think like some people, I've heard girls say like, I didn't think he was super attractive at first, but man, he really grew on me. And as we started talking, he made me laugh, or, oh, I just love to hear him sing, whatever it is. Like there's going to be some initial attraction. It could be spiritual, it could be physical, but I think like it all grows together the more you get to know that person. And the more you get to know like their heart and their personality and things like that, like you find them to be more attractive the longer you get to know them. So I would tell girls like, just because you're not like, oh, he's really good looking the first time you see him, it doesn't necessarily mean that like you shouldn't get to know him. I think a lot of times that attraction can grow.
Mm-hmm. It's true. And sometimes when you get married and y'all get ugly, you still love each other.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Very true.
Okay, I think I just have one more question. Oh, which you've answered this several times. How did you stay focused on God through your single years? And I think you said that you just really focused on serving and what can I do for the Lord during this time.
I think 1 Corinthians 7 is the best answer for that. Like the unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord. So if there's an unmarried woman who's trying to decide, like, what do I do with these years? Singleness is kind of an odd phase. You have no idea how long it's going to last. Like while you're single, there's not like a set time when this is going to end and I'll be married. So I think I would say like, don't just think of this as like a temporary, oh, I don't want to learn a career or start a business or develop a skill or take a job that I couldn't, nothing in life is terribly permanent. So I would say to those girls, like, don't just say, oh, I'm only going to do this till I get married, so therefore I don't need to develop a skill, take a job, whatever. It's like, use those years as this is where I am today, and I'm not going to sacrifice joys of today for hopes for tomorrow. Like, I can only live today, whatever that is. And every life is just made up of phases and seasons. So like whatever season you're in, if a really cool job opportunity comes up, take it. Like a good friend of mine, she owns her own business. She bought a house. She is renovating that house and she's doing a really good job at it. And she's single and she's like, I have these years and no matter what happens to my future, if I do marry, I could sell this house. And because I've renovated it, it's going to be worth more. So she's making wise financial moves. She's positioned her job to be something that she could do a lot of it, even if she is married. And there's just smart things that you can do. Like if you have a job and you're single, save your money. Like pay cash for those things. Don't rack up a lot of debt that if the Lord lets you marry somebody, you're going to carry a bunch of baggage into this relationship because you made poor financial decisions. Like be wise where you are so that if the Lord does have something different for you down the road, you're prepared for it. And it won't just be like a burden that you carry into a relationship.
Yes. And so what are you looking forward to this coming year?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I've enjoyed something that I've made a big change in this past year is positioning myself to work at home and work from home, and that my business side can still be a blessing financially to my family, even though I am technically a stay-at-home business woman. I don't know how that works, but that's what it works. But that's what the Proverbs 31 woman was. So I think she's a great example for that, of like, yourself. Yeah, it's like opportunities to stay in the home and yet still be a blessing to your family financially, however big your family is. So I think in the coming year, we've got some music projects and things like that that we want to see happen that are furthering my ability to be like still the homemaker, but yet have a business on the side that it's not just the side, it's like part of what I do. And so I think that that's been part of what we're doing going forward. Is there's always slight changes happening in that. I don't know. There's a lot of things. Let's see. Of course, we want children in the future, so I guess that's like kind of a future thing too. But I guess like just continuing. I want to learn to be more spirit-filled and controlled in my emotions. So that's a spiritual thing I'm working on, is like not responding I know. It's like I'll be like, oh, I was a horrible wife today. And he's like, no, you're not. It was fine. I'm like, no, I really need to work on this. So I guess there's always things like that like I want the Holy Spirit to continue working on me and for me to be pliable. We heard a message last night and the preacher said early detection of those issues, those sin issues, is the key to keeping a clean heart. And so
mountain out of a molehill when it comes to sin. Just
yes.
Get in the bud. Yeah.
Yes. So I guess that's a spiritual, family, and business goal.
That's wonderful. And your album, when is it going to be released?
By August 1st. August 1st is our technical release date, but
my goal also.
Awesome. Yay. We'll have a double release party, but so we'll see. We might try to push it up a couple weeks if we can, but there's a lot of those, you know how it is in post-production.
Oh goodness. Yes.
We're learning all that for the first time. I know this is your fourth time, but there's so many things that it's like, oh, we did that in reverse. Okay. Note to self.
Because life and schedules, like a quarantine, what do it really, things just change everything.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
Well, I'm looking forward to your album, and it will be available on your website.
Yes, it will. We'll ship out hard copies and things like that. It'll also be available digitally on Bible Truth's sources that they use, like Apple Music and Spotify and all those different things.
And you have sheet music that you've been producing that is available on, what's your websites?
NatalieRaynesMusic.com. So there's a couple web courses for hymn playing and pianists, and then there's lots of individual sheet music that you can use for like congregational accompaniment or offertory special music, that kind of thing.
And you teach piano lessons via live stream, correct?
Yes. So it's live video. That's FaceTime or Skype is what most people use. So works out pretty well. I enjoy it.
A full life. And
I do.
And I just really appreciate you. I appreciate your heart. I appreciate your heart and what you do and how you help people. So
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate what you're doing too. I think that more important in these days, girls need to hear voices of truth.